It started the way most betrayals do, not with some big, dramatic moment, but with little things. Small details that, on their own, did not seem like much. A pause before answering a question. The way she glanced at her phone and turned the screen away just a little too fast. The scent she carried home, not quite her usual perfume, but something different, something unfamiliar. At first, I brushed it off. That is what a man does when he trusts his wife. You tell yourself you are just imagining things, reading too much into it. Because what is the alternative? Admitting that the woman you built a life with is lying to you? We have been married for 8 years. Long enough to settle into a rhythm, to have inside jokes, to make a house feel like a home. She worked in marketing, always hustling, always chasing the next big opportunity. Her job had her traveling a lot, or at least that was what she told me. I never had a reason to question it. Not until I found the first receipt. I was not even looking for anything. Just cleaning out the car, tossing out old coffee cups, gum wrappers, all the usual junk. And there it was, wedged between the seats, a receipt from a hotel I had never heard her mention. The Grand Hilton, Dallas. 3 nights. Paid in full. My fingers tightened around the paper as my mind raced. I tried to come up with a reason, some logical explanation. Maybe it was for work. Maybe the company booked it and then plans changed. Maybe it was not even hers. But then I saw the date. She had been on a business trip that week, but she told me she was in San Francisco. Dallas was not on the itinerary. That night, I did not blow up. I did not accuse her. I was not even mad yet, just confused. I waited until she was relaxed, sitting on the couch with a glass of wine, scrolling through her phone. I kept it casual. Just a question. Hey, did you ever stay at the Grand Hilton in Dallas? She barely hesitated. No, why? I pulled the receipt from my pocket and watched her face. The reaction was small, too small. Not shock, not confusion, just a flicker of something behind her eyes, like she was doing quick math in her head. And then she smiled, letting out a soft laugh. Oh, that must be a mistake. Maybe work booked it and canceled. You know how they mess up sometimes. A perfectly reasonable answer. Too perfect. Something about it did not sit right with me. The way she did not ask why I was asking. The way she just shrugged it off and went back to scrolling as if I had asked about the weather. I'll let it go for now. But once a crack appears, it does not take long for it to spread. A few days later, I found another one. This time, buried deep in her purse, hidden with loose change and gum wrappers. A different hotel, a different city, and then a dinner receipt from a fancy steakhouse in Miami, the kind of place you do not go to alone. I did not say anything. Instead, I started watching. Not in a crazy way. I did not follow her or put a tracker on her car. I just paid attention to the way she suddenly had new clothes, designer outfits that were not exactly business casual, to how she started lingering in the car after getting home, finishing calls before coming inside, to how she suddenly took an interest in the gym, even though she had never cared about working out before. And then there was him, her boss, a name that kept coming up, always in passing, always with that same casual tone. Oh, Jake had me stay late, or Jake want me to go to the conference this year. Just enough to plant him in my head, never enough to seem suspicious. Until I started noticing the pattern. He was on every trip, the same ones where those hotel receipts came from, the same last-minute emergencies that pulled her away, the same late nights. It did not take a genius to put the pieces together. She thought she was being careful. She thought she was smart, but she made one mistake. She underestimated me, because while she was busy spinning her web of lies, I was setting a trap. I was not looking to fix things. I did not want to hear excuses. I wanted revenge. This was not about salvaging a broken marriage. This was not about getting closure. This was about anger, the kind that builds slow and steady, waiting for the right moment to strike. She thought she had gotten away with it. She had no idea what was coming. I did not confront her. Not yet. Confronting her meant giving her a chance to lie, to spin the story, to make me question myself. No, I wanted her to feel safe in her lies, to keep digging herself deeper while I stood back and watched. So I played my part, just like she played hers. I kissed her goodbye in the mornings, asked about her day, nodded along as she fed me the same tired lines. It was a long day at work. Jake is such a pain sometimes. I might have another trip next month. Every word was a lie. and I let her believe I was blind to it. Meanwhile, I started gathering proof. Not for court, not for a fight, for me, to make sure there was no doubt left in my mind, to erase any thought that maybe I was imagining things. So I kept track, took photos of every receipt, marked down every trip, logged every time she said she was working late. And then I went further. She thought she was careful, but people like her, they always slip up. They get too comfortable. Her phone was the key. She never left it lying around anymore. It was always face down, always within reach. At night, she put it on silent, charging on her side of the bed. If I so much as glanced at it, she would shift, reposition herself, like the screen itself with a locked door. One night, she fell asleep early, face turned away from me, breathing slow and steady, completely at peace. I waited. Then, I reached for her phone. It was locked, of course, but I knew her password. She thought I did not, but I did. Years of marriage teach you things. The way someone types, the numbers they use most often, the little habits they do not even realize they have. I typed it in, and that was the moment everything changed. And just like that, I had access to everything. Messages, emails, apps, locations. I went straight to the text first. She had deleted most of them, but not well enough. A few still lingered, buried in old threads, disguised as professional conversations. Late-night messages to Jake, her boss, her lover. At first glance, the messages seemed normal. Work talk, meeting reminders, nothing outright suspicious. But the tone was wrong. Too comfortable, too familiar. The kind of way you talk to someone when there is more than just business between you. And then I saw it. A single message she had forgotten to erase. I cannot wait to see you again. Last weekend was not enough. My stomach twisted into a cold, heavy knot. Last weekend, she had been with him. Not in San Francisco. Not on a business trip. With him. I stared at the screen, my vision blurring at the edges. My brain tried to come up with some kind of explanation, some way to twist it into something innocent. But there was nothing. No way to spin this. I set the phone down, breathing slowly through my nose, forcing myself to stay calm. My pulse pounded so hard I could feel it in my ears. I was not just angry. I hated her, and I hated him. Not the kind of hate that fades overnight. Not the kind you can talk through or patch up. The kind that seeps into your bones, settles deep, and stays there. The kind that makes you want to burn everything down and never look back. But I did not lose control. Not yet. Instead, I took the next step. If she was with him last weekend, there had to be proof. A hotel, a transaction, something. I went to her email, scrolled through old confirmations, deleted messages, travel logs. And there it was. A reservation confirmation. A boutique hotel. 2 hours away. Booked under her name. Paid in full. No corporate booking. No business trip. Just her. I exhaled, slow and steady. My hands curled into fists, my nails pressing into my palms. There was no denying it now. No more excuses. No more giving her the benefit of the doubt. She had made her choice. She had chosen him. And now, she was going to face the consequences. But not yet. No, I was not going to storm in and start a screaming match. That is what she would expect. That is what cheaters always expect. The confrontation, the yelling, the crocodile tears, the desperate apologies. I was not giving her that chance. I was going to let this play out. Let her think she was still in control. Let her dig herself deeper. Because when I finally made my move, when I shattered the little world she had built, it would be too late for her to escape. I did not sleep that night. Could not. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling while she slept beside me, her breathing soft and steady, like she was not living a double life. Like she had not spent the weekend wrapped up in another man's arms. I turned my head and looked at her. Her hair spilled over the pillow. Her lips slightly parted. Peaceful. Innocent. A lie. How many times had she done this? How many nights had she come home to me, kissed me goodnight, let me hold her while his scent was still on her skin? How many times had she smiled at me, knowing full well what she had done? I clenched my jaw so hard my teeth ached. My fingers dug into the sheets, my body rigid with fury. I had the proof. I could have woken her up right then and there. Could have shoved the phone in her face, and demanded an explanation. But I did not want an explanation. I did not want excuses. I wanted justice. So I waited. In the morning, I played my part. I got up, made coffee, kissed her on the cheek. If she noticed that my grip lingered a little too long, that my touch was a little too firm, she did not say anything. She just smiled. And God, I wanted to wipe that smile off her face. She sat at the table, sipping her coffee, scrolling through her phone while I leaned against the counter, gripping my mug so tightly I thought it might crack. Long day ahead, I asked, keeping my voice steady. She barely glanced up. Yeah, Jake has us working on a new campaign. Probably going to be late. I nodded. Tough boss. She let out a small laugh. Tell me about it. That laugh. That damn laugh. It was not just the sound of betrayal. It was the sound of arrogance. Confidence. She thought she had everything under control. Thought I was still in the dark. Still the same clueless husband she had been playing for who knows how long. I let her believe it. She kissed me goodbye, grabbed her bag, and walked out the door like it was just another normal day. I watched her car disappear down the street. Then I got to work. Not my job. No, I had bigger things to handle. I sat down on my laptop and opened my notes. The dates, the locations, the receipts, the emails, the text message she had carelessly left behind. Then I started digging deeper. I started with the bank statements, then the shared credit card history. I was no computer expert, but I did not need to be. She had gotten careless. She thought deleting a few messages and tossing a few receipts would be enough. But digital footprints do not disappear so easily. I found everything. The weekend getaways, the overpriced dinners, the gifts, the money she spent on him. A slow, cold rage settled in my chest. She was not just cheating, she was investing in him. I saw the transactions, luxury men's clothing, reservations at high-end places I had never set foot in, gifts that were clearly not meant for me. My money, our money. I closed the laptop and leaned back, exhaling slowly. My hands were shaking, but not with fear. With pure, restrained fury. This was not some one-time mistake. This was not just lust or a moment of weakness. She was building a whole life with him, and I was the fool paying for it. At that moment, I knew I had two choices. I could pack my bags, walk away, and let her keep her dirty little secrets. Let her move in with Jake. Let them have their perfect little affair in peace while I licked my wounds like some pathetic loser. Or I could burn it all to the ground. I stood up, feeling something shift inside me. That slow simmering anger that had been building for weeks, maybe months, finally caught fire. No, she was not going to get away with this. Not her. Not him. I grabbed my keys and walked out the door. I had work to do. I did not go to my job that day. Instead, I drove. Not randomly. I had a destination in mind. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. My mind played and replayed every disgusting little detail of her betrayal like a bad movie I could not turn off. Her voice, her lies, that smug little smirk when she thought she was being clever. The receipts, the texts, the way she spent my money on another man. I was not just dealing with a cheating wife. I was dealing with a woman who had zero respect for me. And that was the part that burned the most. I pulled into the parking lot of a small cafe. One of those places where nobody really pays attention to you. I needed somewhere quiet, somewhere I could think. I sat at a table near the window, my coffee untouched, my laptop open. It was time to plan. I was not about to rush into this like some idiot. No sloppy mistakes. No emotional outbursts. I was going to make her regret this. And I was going to take everything from her. I already had proof. The texts, the emails, the hotel receipts, the credit card transactions. But that was just the beginning. I needed leverage. Something that would not just make her squirm, but would destroy her entire world. So I dug deeper. I accessed our shared cloud storage. Something she must have forgotten about. She had deleted most of her messages, but she was not careful enough. Old photos, screenshots, forwarded itineraries. She had saved things. And buried in one of those folders, I hit the jackpot. An email thread between her and Jake. A flight itinerary for a trip she never told me about. A so-called business conference that did not exist. A weekend in California. Booked under her maiden name. Like she was single. Like I did not even exist. But that was not the worst part. Tucked away in a folder labeled Documents, I found something else. A contract, a non-disclosure agreement, signed by her, issued by Jake's company. And suddenly, everything made sense. This was not just an affair. It was a cover-up. Maybe workplace relationships were against company policy. Maybe Jake had done this before. Maybe he had other women before her. Maybe there was money involved. I did not know yet. But what I did know, this was not just about sex. This was about power. And if Jake was hiding something, that meant I had leverage. I copied everything. Every file, every email, every text. I backed it all up to an external drive, encrypted it, and stored multiple copies. This was no longer just about revenge. This was war. She thought she was smart. She thought she could lie her way out of anything. But she did not expect me to play the game. I picked up my phone and sent her a text. Hey, babe. Thinking about planning a little getaway. Just you and me. We have not had one in a while. I could almost hear the gears turning in her head. It took her a full minute to respond. Oh, that sounds amazing. When were you thinking? Fake enthusiasm. Overcompensating. She was nervous because she had plans. I played along. Next weekend. No work, no distractions. Just us. She hesitated. Another red flag. Let me check my schedule. Work has been crazy lately. Right. Work. More like him. I already knew what she was going to say. She would stall for a few days, then claim she could not get away. And that same weekend, there would magically be another business trip. Another lie. But this time, I was not letting it slide. This time, I would be watching. That night, I played my part perfectly. She came home late. Too late. Her makeup was still flawless. Her perfume fresh. Her phone clutched in her hand like a lifeline. I was sitting in the living room when she walked in. Long day, I asked, keeping my voice calm. She let out a dramatic sigh. You have no idea. She dropped her bag by the door, stretched, and walked over to kiss me. And for the first time in weeks, I let her. I let her press her lips against mine. I let her touch me like she was not screwing another man behind my back. I wanted to see if I could feel it, if I could taste the lie. And I could. I forced myself to smile. I was thinking we could order in tonight. Just relax. Sound good. She beamed. That sounds perfect. And just like that, she thought she was safe again. She thought I was still blind, still wrapped around her little finger. She had no idea that I had already seen everything. She had no idea her time was running out. I checked our credit card transactions, found a charge for a high-end restaurant in his part of town, a place she had never once been with me. I checked her location history, saw her at a hotel 3 nights ago. She hadn't even bothered to turn it off. She had gotten sloppy, too comfortable, too sure of herself, and I was done playing dumb. I started leaving little breadcrumbs. A hotel receipt left barely visible on the counter. A text message on my phone from a mystery contact just to see if she would ask. A sudden, casual mention of Jake. And every single time, I watched her. Watched the way her breath hitched. Watched the way her eyes flickered with just the faintest trace of panic. She knew. She could feel it. Something was coming. She just did not know when or how. But when it did, she was going to wish she had never underestimated me. I could see it now. The tiny fractures in her act. The way her smile faltered when I looked at her just a little too long. The way her hands fidgeted when I asked her simple questions. The way she hesitated before answering, as if she was checking for traps. I was in her head now, and that was exactly where I wanted to be. She had spent months, maybe even years, carefully constructing this lie. A world where she could have both, a husband at home, stable and reliable, and a lover on the side, thrilling and secret. But now, that world was crumbling. And the best part? She had no idea how much I had already seen. It happened on a Wednesday. She had been extra careful that morning, overly affectionate, kissing me longer than usual, holding my gaze as if searching for something. She was testing me. She felt the shift, even if she couldn't quite name it. So I played along, acted normal, gave her no reason to panic. And by lunchtime, she was back to her old routine, sneaking out of the office for a quick errand. Only her errand involved a man and a hotel room. I knew because I was watching. Not in person. Not yet. But technology was on my side. That morning, while she was in the shower, I checked her phone again. Just a quick glance. She had been smart enough to delete texts. but she had not deleted her calendar notifications. And there it was, a single entry. Meeting, 12:30 p.m. No location, no details, but I already knew. I waited until 12:15, then checked our credit card account. There it was, a transaction at a boutique hotel, 20 minutes from our house. I stared at it for a long time, gripping my phone so hard my knuckles went white. This was it. This was real-time proof. For a split second, I considered driving there, storming into that hotel, catching them in the act, watching their faces twist in horror when they realized the game was over. But I did not, because that was not enough. I was not looking for closure. I was looking for destruction. That night, I set another trap. She came home at her usual time, hair and makeup freshly done. She looked at me like she was checking for cracks, trying to figure out if I suspected anything. I kept my expression calm, distant but not too distant, just enough for her to feel it. Long day. I asked the same question I had asked 100 times before. She nodded, setting her bag down. So long. I had back-to-back meetings. A lie. I let a silence stretch between us, just long enough for her to shift uncomfortably. Then I asked the question I knew would make her heart stop. How's Jake? Her fingers tightened around the strap of her purse. A small thing, but I caught it. She forced a smile. Same as always. What? I shrugged, keeping my voice casual. Just wondering. You mention him a lot. That was it. Just a small push. A little pressure. And it worked. She laughed. A nervous, unnatural sound. Well, yeah, he's my boss. Her eyes darted now, her brain racing. She knew. She knew something was off. She just did not know how much. And that was the fun part. The next morning, she was up before me. Not because she had an early meeting, because she was thinking. I could see it all over her face. She had been lying for so long, but now she was questioning everything. Had she slipped up? Did I know? Had I seen something? She wanted to ask, but she did not dare. Instead, she played the doting wife. She kissed me goodbye, held on to me a little too long. I love you, she said softly, like she was testing me, testing if she still had control. I kissed her back, looking her dead in the eyes. I love you too, and I saw it, that flicker of doubt. For the first time, she was not sure if I meant it. Later that day, I got my next break. I was at home, sitting in my office, going through the evidence when my phone buzzed. An unknown number. I almost ignored it. Then I picked up, and the second I heard the voice on the other end, I knew. Jake. For a second, I just sat there, gripping the phone, my pulse pounding. Then, without a word, I reached over and hit record. Hello, I said, keeping my voice calm. A pause. Then, hey, this is Jake. That smug bastard. My jaw tightened. What do you want? There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then a voice, steady, controlled, like he had practiced every word before dialing. I think we need to talk. I let the silence hang, just enough to make him uncomfortable. Then I asked the only question that mattered. Talk about what? He cleared his throat. Look, man, I don't want this to turn into something bigger than it needs to be. I cut him off before he could even finish. If you didn't want trouble, you shouldn't have been screwing my wife. Silence. I could almost hear the gears turning in his head, scrambling to come up with some excuse, some way out of this. Then he sighed. Look, I know you're upset. I laughed, dark and humorless. You don't know a damn thing, Mark. Another beat of silence. Then, carefully, like he was choosing his words one by one, he said, Can we meet? Just to talk. I almost told him to go to hell. Almost. But then something hit me. Mark was nervous, maybe even scared. And scare men? They make mistakes. So I smiled, because he had just handed me my next move. Sure, Mark, I said, voice steady. Let's talk. But what he did not know, this was not a conversation. This was an execution. And when I was finished, he was going to regret ever crossing me. Mark had no clue what he had walked into. That much was clear the second I stepped into the bar. It was one of those dimly lit places downtown, quiet enough for private discussions, but public enough that he probably thought it gave him some kind of safety net. Smart move, but not smart enough. I spotted him immediately. He was already there, sitting in a booth near the back, hunched over a glass of whiskey, his knee bouncing under the table. The moment the door swung open, his eyes flicked toward it, scanning the room, and when he saw me, something changed. Fear. Not just the kind of guilt you see in a man who got caught doing something wrong. No, this was real fear, the kind that settles deep in your bones when you realize you have no way out. Good. I took my time walking over, letting him sit in his discomfort a little longer. When I finally slid into the booth across from him, I did not say a word. Just leaned back, crossed my arms, and stared. Mark forced a weak smile. Hey man, I did not return it. Why am I here, Mark? He exhaled, rubbing a hand over his jaw, like he was bracing for something. Look, I just wanted to clear the air. I leaned in slightly. The air was clear until you decided to sleep with my wife. His jaw twitched. I didn't. Do not lie. His mouth snapped shut. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and tapped the screen. Then I slid it across the table. There it was. The hotel receipts. The text messages. The NDA she had signed. I watched as he went pale, his fingers twitching slightly, like he was resisting the urge to snatch the phone. His throat bobbed. Where did you? Does not matter. I cut him off. What matters is that I know. Everything. Mark let out a slow, shaky breath, leaning back like the weight of the world had just landed on his shoulders. He ran a hand through his hair, shaking his head. Look, man, I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I tilted my head. You didn't mean to book her flights? Didn't mean to sneak around? Didn't mean to screw my wife behind my back? He sighed, rubbing his temples. It's not that simple. I smiled for the first time. It is for me. Mark's eyes darted around the bar, like he was looking for an escape. Too late. I let the silence stretch, watching him squirm. Then I dropped the hammer. You know what your real problem is, Mark? My voice was calm, controlled, almost casual. You weren't just screwing my wife. You were screwing up. His forehead creased. What? I picked up my phone, swiped to a new set of files, and turned the screen toward him. He blinked. Then his face drained of color. Because there it was. Emails. Documents. Financial transactions. Proof of his real secrets. Not just the affair. No, this was bigger. Misuse of company funds. Unauthorized expenses. Shady financial moves that he thought nobody would catch. His lips parted slightly, like he couldn't believe what he was looking at. His hands clenched into fists. Where the hell did you get this? I shrugged. Doesn't matter. Mark's jaw tightened so hard, I thought his teeth might crack. His breathing changed, shallow, uneven. I leaned forward, voice dropping low. This is not just about my wife anymore, Mark. You took something from me. So now I'm taking everything from you. He reached for his glass, fingers trembling, but he did not drink. His mind was racing. He knew he was trapped. I let the silence stretch, letting him stew in his own failure. Then, finally he spoke. What do you want? Now the real game begins. I had been waiting for him to ask that. I could have ended it right then. I had enough to ruin him. One email to the right person, and his whole career would go up in flames. His reputation, his money, his wife, gone in an instant. But that would have been too easy. I wanted more. I leaned back, arms crossed. First, you break things off. Immediately. Mark blinked, confused. That's it. I smiled. No. I'll let the weight of my next words settle in before I said them. I want you to make her suffer. Mark swallowed. How? I leaned in closer, my voice ice cold. I want you to end it in the worst way possible. Publicly. Brutally. Humiliate her. Make her cry. Make her beg. Make her regret every single choice she made. Mark looked down at his hands, the conflict clear in his eyes. He had thought this meeting was about making peace. Instead, he had been handed an ultimatum. And the truth? He had no choice. Not anymore. I held up my phone one last time. If you don't, this goes everywhere. To your boss. To the board. To your wife. To the press. You will lose everything. Mark exhaled, staring down at the table, his mind racing. Then, slowly, he nodded. I sat back, satisfied. Good. You have 24 hours. I stood up, sliding out of the booth. Enjoy your drink, Mark. Then I walked out, leaving him sitting there, staring at the wreckage of his own life, knowing damn well that he had no way out. The fallout begins. The next day I waited to see if he would follow through. And he did. Oh, he did. And it was going to be beautiful. She walked through the front door that night, looking like a ghost. Eyes red, shoulders slumped, hands shaking. She saw me sitting on the couch, just watching, waiting. And for the first time in years, I saw it in her face. Fear. Not the kind that comes from lying. Not the fear of getting caught. The fear of losing everything. Her lips trembled, her voice barely a whisper. He broke up with me. I tilted my head. Oh. She swallowed hard, arms wrapping around herself like they could hold her together. It was humiliating. He did it in front of the whole office. Called me pathetic. Desperate. Said I meant nothing to him. Her breath hitched. Everyone saw. I just stared. No sympathy. No reaction. Just watching her unravel. She sniffled. I don't understand. Everything was fine, and then I stood up. Slowly. Deliberately. Walked over to her. Leaning in just close enough that she could feel the weight of my words. Guess he decided you weren't worth it. She blinked. Stunned. I smiled. Sharp. Cold. Then I turned and walked away, leaving her standing there. Alone. Broken. And for the first time since she betrayed me, she knew exactly how it felt. She didn't sleep that night. I knew because I didn't either. I heard the floor creak as she paced the bedroom. The quiet, muffled sobs she tried to choke down. But she wasn't crying because she lost me. She was crying because she lost him. Because she had been discarded. Publicly. Brutally. Exactly as I planned. And now, she had to live with it. I stayed on the couch, pretending to be asleep, letting her sit in her misery, letting her relive every second of her humiliation. Mark, her boss, her lover, the man she threw away our marriage for, had ripped her apart in front of everyone. Stripped away every last bit of power she thought she had. And all those colleagues who used to respect her, now, they saw her for what she really was. A woman who gambled everything and lost. I could have gone to bed, could have let her come crawling, begging for another chance. But I didn't, because I didn't want to fix anything. I wanted her to feel it, the shame, the regret, the loneliness. So I let her rot in the mess she created. By morning, she was drained. She shuffled into the kitchen, moving like she was made of glass. I didn't acknowledge her at first. Just pour my coffee, taking my time. I could feel her eyes on me. Waiting. For what? For me to ask if she was okay? If I still cared? She was going to be waiting a long time. I finally turned, leaning against the counter, mug in hand. She looked like hell. Hair a mess, dark circles under her eyes, face pale. Her lips parted slightly, like she wanted to speak. Then, hesitantly, "Can we talk?" I took a slow sip of my coffee. Then I shrugged. About what? She hesitated, because she didn't even know what she wanted to say. An apology? A lie? A pathetic excuse? None of it mattered anymore. She swallowed hard, gripping the counter like she needed something to hold on to. I don't understand what happened. Everything was fine, and then I let out a short, humorless laugh. Fine. She flinched. I stepped closer, watched as she shrunk away from me for the first time in her life. Tell me something, I said, voice calm. Curious. What exactly was fine? She swallowed again, but I didn't let her answer. Was it fine when you booked hotel rooms under your maiden name? My head tilted. Or when you took weekend trips while I stayed home like a fool? Her mouth opened, maybe to deny it, maybe to reach for some excuse. I didn't care. I leaned in. Or was it fine when you used our money on him? Her face crumpled. I didn't mean. I laughed. Yeah, you never mean to, right? She wasn't used to this. Wasn't used to me being the one in control. And she hated it. She looked away, biting her lip. I don't understand why he did that to me. I set my coffee down. Slowly. Then I smirked. Maybe he just got tired of you two. Her breath caught in her throat. Her eyes widened. And in that moment, she realized she hadn't just lost Mark. She had lost me. For good. For days, she wandered around the house like a ghost. Avoiding me. Avoiding the truth. But I knew she was plotting something. Because she always plotted. And sure enough, 3 nights later, she made her final move. I came home late. The lights were dim. The table was set, candles flickering. A bottle of wine sat open. She was wearing my favorite dress. I stopped in the doorway, arms crossed. She smiled. Soft. Sweet. Like none of it had ever happened. I made dinner, she said, voice gentle. I thought, maybe we could talk. Maybe we could. I cut her off. You think a meal fixes this? Her smile faltered. I just want to make things right. Make things right. I repeated, stepping closer. Where was this energy when you were sneaking around behind my back? When you were laughing at me? Her lip trembled. I was never laughing at you. I scoffed. Then what was it? She didn't answer. Because there was no answer. Just silence. And that silence? It told me everything. I leaned in, voice low. You don't get to fix this. Tears welled in her eyes. I still love you. I smiled. Cold. Empty. Then I picked up my keys. And I left. I didn't come home that night. Or the next. I stayed in a hotel. Booked under my own name. And when I finally did go back, it was only to pack. She was sitting on the couch, hands folded in her lap, silent. Too broken to beg. Too tired to fight. Because she knew. It was over. I grabbed my last bag, stopped at the door. One final look at the woman I had once loved. She looked up, voice barely above a whisper. So that's it? I smiled. That's it. Then I walked out. And I never looked back.